right, the overview for this session can be found on page 17, so you could please read up to understand the objectives. I'd like to invite the session chair, would also need the nameplate sorted as soon as possible, as well as refreshments. Thank you very much, team. He joined Acumen as Director of East Africa in September 2012. Prior to this, he's been a long supporter of Acumen and informally served as an advisor for many years, and was also actively involved in the Fellows Program. He most recently served as the Group Chief Finance Officer of Rift Valley Railways, where he led the structuring of a $287 million debt equity capital investment in the rail sector. He has expertise in strategic and business planning, organizational alignment, and business transformation. And the next speaker holds a honors degree in computing and retail management from Oxford University. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, can we put our hands together as I invite Mr. Duncan Oyango. He is Director, Acumen Fund East Africa. Joining Mr. Oyango is another speaker who has over 20 years experience in banking and finance, having started out pricing equity derivatives on the Johannesburg Stock Exchange. He is currently assisting a leading Western European regulator to conduct their 2010 AMA Accreditation Review Program. He's a frequent lecturer on operational risk for banking supervisors at the Bank for International Settlements, as well as at industry conferences and seminars. He's lectured on risk management and has worked with the World Bank, IFC, in the Russian Federation and across Eastern Europe. He obtained a Bachelor of Commerce degree from the University of Wits and read for an MBA through the Graduate Institute of Management and Technology in South Africa. He's a fellow of the South African Institute of Bankers, director and fellow of the Institute of Operational Risk, and a chartered member of Risks of the South African, and a chartered member of Risk Who's Who, having been recognized in January 2009 by Op Risk and Compliance magazine. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, the CEO of Risk Business International, Mr. Mike Finlay. If you don't want your risk profile prepared, you better clap better for that. Thank you very much. All right. The next speaker obtained a BSc in Physics and Electronics from the University of Lagos, an MSc in Economics and Business Administration from the University of Navarre in Spain. And she's a seasoned professional with experience that spans banking, non-governmental, and the academic sectors. She was the first prize winner of the 2010-2011 Emerald/ALCS African Management Research Fund Award and the African Women Development Champion Award in 2013. She's also received the Best Paper Award in Entrepreneurship Track, Academy for African American Business and Development Conference in Edmonton, 2011. She currently works as the Academic Director and Owner-Manager Program Coordinator at Lagos Business School, Pan-Atlantic University. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome Henrietta Onwe-Guzie. Yeah. And last but certainly not the least, I'd introduced him earlier, so I'd just like to respectfully invite Dr. Franklin Nemekangu to join the session. He's a lecturer, Finance and Financial Services, Glasgow School of Business and Society. If you don't want charts and graphs and figures, can we put our hands together for him? All right, over to you, Mr. Oyango.
It's working.
Yeah. Please.
Thank you so much. Guys, welcome to the last session. I hope we're going to keep you rooted to your seats and so that you really enjoy the robust discussion we're about to have. From my perspective, the reason why we're here is primarily because financial inclusion, or exclusion for that matter, is very important. This is something that's pervasive. The problem is pervasive across the continent. And there are various bodies talking about financial inclusion. If I recall, last year at the AU, the 50th anniversary of the AU, the subject was about inclusive business models as a way of creating the next 50 years of African success. So I think we are at the forefront of discussions around what is important to Africa and to African economies. I think for today, and particularly for this session, we're going to examine the topic of social responsible investments and sustainable banking. I don't know whether that's an oxymoron, but I hope that by the end of the session, it's going to make a lot of sense. We have got about 4 objectives. Number one is we're going to examine the emergence and the shifts that we can see towards socially responsible investments. We're going to look at what African governments, policymakers are doing to embed sustainability in their various economic blueprints. So like, for example, in Nigeria, talking about Vision 2020 and the Nigerian Sustainable Banking Principles. In Kenya, we've got Vision 2030, which is aiming to lift us to become a middle income status economy. And there are a few around. We're going to deep dive, number 3, we're going to deep dive into impact investing. Looking at impact investing as a tool for financial inclusion. And finally, we want to keep challenging the banks. I'm afraid if you're a banker today, you'll probably be at the receiving end of stuff, but never mind, this is how we learn and this is how you innovate. So we're going to challenge the banks to improve their performance and seek to positively impact their customers, to positively affect the communities and also and the environments. So those are, ballpark, what we're going to try and achieve. And to do that, I have a very impressive, panel of speakers, very distinguished with impressive backgrounds. And you can read about their bios in the package. So the 3 speakers are Mike Finlay, the CEO of Risk Business International, Professor Henrietta Onugbuzie. I've been practicing this all day, so you guys keep with me here. Professor is going to talk to us about impact, investing for impact as a tool for financial inclusion. Mike Finlay is going to give us an analysis and a comparative around sustainable banking and risk management. And then Dr. Franklin, who lectures at Glasgow School of Business, is going to look at the various banking models, sustainable banking models for African economies. We have about 20 minutes, 15 to 20 minutes each for the speakers, followed by a discussion, question and answer with yourselves. So, guys, here we go. Mike, you want to take it on?
Thanks, Duncan.
Thanks.
We have lights, power, action. So I'll start off with a little story for you. We've got Bongwe and Johnny walking down the road. And the 2 guys are just chatting to each other. And along comes Sally. And Bongwe looks and says, nice girl this. And Sally says, hey, Bongwe, how are you? No, I'm fine. He says, Bongwe, I've been meaning to ask you, what does your father do? And Bongwe thinks and he says, oh, he's a rubbish collector. And Sally says, oh, that's nice. And she turns and walks away. And Johnny turns around and says, Bongwe, what are you saying? Why did you say that? That's not true and you know it. He says, yeah, I'm too embarrassed to tell her that my father's a banker. It's shocking. It's terrible. We talk about banksters. They are the bad guys. I give them 100 naira and they give me 99 back. Okay? I want to borrow 100, I've got to pay 1,000 back. It's not fair. It is not fair. Hold that thought for a moment. Our theme is around sustainability and responsibility. I give to you that sustainability is like a chain, and a chain is only as strong as its weakest link. That chain starts in your personal lives. it continues into the private sector, and it extends into the public sector. And that chain stretches across not just a country or a region within a country, but across the universe. And in order for that chain to remain sustainable over time, we have to accept that there is a set of responsibilities that go with it. And these responsibilities start off as a parent looking after a child, and from the child back to the parent. As a citizen to your country or your state, but from the state to the citizen. From a corporate entity to the state that harbors it, and likewise from the state back to the corporate entity. From the corporate entity to its clients and customers, and vice versa. All of us are players in this environment. Now, I'll stop for a moment and think about risk management. And if I think about risk management, there's one thing I know. Risk is something that is adverse. It's something that's unexpected. It's something that we don't like. So risk management is about ensuring that that doesn't happen. Is there anyone in this room who would like to give me 1,000 naira, and in return, I will give you 10 back? What? All of you are going to give me 1,000 to get 10 back? 10 naira back. Ife, I've got you. You're on. No, 10, not 10,000. So apart from one lunatic, do you have anyone else in the room who wants to? Because, ladies and gentlemen, that's what you're asking the banks to do. You're saying to the banks, you need to put infrastructure in place, you need to give us services for free. Because all of these things cost money. And unfortunately, we need to understand from a sustainability perspective, from a responsibility perspective, that we've all got to play in this particular game. And I want you just to think about that for a few minutes, because I want to pick it up again as I get to the end of the presentation. So, risk management, see if we can get this thing to work. Seems we're all having an issue with it. Right. There was a report issued on Monday this week by The Economist magazine from the intelligence unit. And what it looked at is the best places in the world to do business. And it started off by giving us a set of ratings that are based on 10 qualitative and quantitative factors. And these are things like political stability, macroeconomic variables, education, infrastructure, policies around doing business, etc., etc., etc. Right, see if we can get this. There we go. So the top 5 countries are Singapore, Switzerland, Hong Kong, Canada, and Australia. Compared to last year's rankings, the only one to have changed is Canada, who've come up from 7th place, replacing Sweden, who dropped to 7th. Based on the 10-point score, the highest score was Singapore, with a score of 8.65, with Australia getting slightly less at 8.29. There were 85 countries covered in this particular study. Who could guess where the highest African country comes? '54th, South Africa, coming in at 52 a year ago. And the reason given for it dropping 2 places is fragmentation and disruption in the political environment where the ruling party is having a few ructions, as well as the ongoing crime rates. Of interest, though, its score was 6.23. There are 8 other African countries in the 85 listed. And if you look at them, the vast majority, other than Egypt and South Africa, have improved their positions. But scarily, their scores are somewhat like half that of those in the top 5. So we sit with a bit of a moral dilemma in this continent of ours. If we want to attract business in, we've got to make ourselves more attractive. We need investment in order to become sustainable, and to deliver on our responsibility to those people who do not have banking services. Now, interestingly, and this is where the bankster label does sometimes fit, there was a report in today's Standard in Nairobi. Kenya's banks have just released their first quarter financial figures, and they show an improvement in profits of 18.5% from the first quarter of last year, equaling somewhere in the region of 33 billion shillings. So banks are profitable, and let's not forget that as we go through things. Now, unfortunately, this whole thing of banksters is about trust. And there's something called the Edelman Barometer, which measures the trust that people around the world in different types of economies have in different industry sectors. And what you'll notice is that banking and financial services in general comes bottom of the pile, lower even than the media. I don't know how many of you believe what you read in the newspaper. I don't believe much, which tells me that maybe it's better to say you're a second-hand used car salesman than saying you're a banker. What is interesting, though, is if we then take the same view on trust and compare it between emerging countries and so-called developed countries. And what you'll notice in almost every situation, people seem to have more trust in emerging nations than what they have in so-called developed countries. Now, this is both good and bad. So it means that when I'm sitting in my hut and I've got my few shillings under my mattress, and I'm a bit scared that somebody's going to steal both the mattress and my money, that if I go off to the bank, I'm probably in a better position. However, if we believe the bankster label, it means that the bank manager then steals that money as well and charges me a service fee for doing it, which is not necessarily a good thing. So why don't we trust banks? I think the answer, and this is again from the Edelman Trust Barometer, lies in the fact that around about 59% of the problems that we see in the financial services sector globally are all to do with conduct, culture, and ethics. Reference has been made to the great financial crisis, or the global financial crisis, however you want to call it. The reality there is that in the main, greedy people chasing additional business sold mortgages in the United States to people who could neither afford them nor understand what they were actually buying into. Very simple. If I come to you and I say, I'll pay you $5 for every single mortgage application you bring me, are you going to care about the quality of that mortgage? All you're interested in is those $5 you get for every single one. I'll go and sit at McDonald's, every person who walks in, fill in this form, sign here, thank you very much, you've got a mortgage. Okay, then we package them, we missell them, we misinsure them, and some poor sucker who's got a pension never gets his pension because the pension fund is suddenly bankrupt. That's the reality of today's modern banking. Not a pleasant situation to be in. And that's why we see newspaper headlines like this one, banksters, okay, crooks, ethics. We then start talking about sustainability on top of this. And you then get the wise bankers coming up with, effectively greenwashing type products, carbon credit trading. So we'll help you offset your impact on the environment. And then what we suddenly find is that these things are being forged. They are built on deceit. And next thing you know, there's government investigations into what's going on with these kind of products. Oh, don't worry about that. We will publish sustainability reports on our websites that prove exactly how good and sustainable we really are. More greenwashing, particularly, unfortunately, in the United States of America, where effectively very little has been done in the field of sustainability in financial services. So how can we change these things? What do we need to do? Where do we need to go to with financial services? There's this concept of banking for the unbanked. And it was interesting, Brian, this morning, your comment saying that some 50% of the global adulthood don't have access to banking services. There's an article in this morning's Business Reporter in Mumbai, India. The Indian government has just released a new set of banking requirements, and these are all to do with differently abled people. And what it estimates is that there are 70 million people in India access to traditional banking services. Let's not fool ourselves. The requirements of sustainability are far, far bigger than those living on the breadline. Some of the issues that we can think of around M-Pesa, for example, sound impressive. They sound great, great services that we can offer. A report out last year said that only 31% of the African population have access to mobile phones, and that by 2017, that may go up to 37%. That is not the answer to sustainability and bringing banking to the unbanked. From an infrastructure perspective, if you live in a rural village many miles from anywhere else, where do I get a mobile phone signal? Mobile banking is not necessarily the answer. A different form of answer is how do we actually create mobile banks, i.e. banks that are actually physically mobile enough to get into rural areas. Then we have to take into account the risks that come along with this. M-Pesa, what's one of the biggest risks we have? Cybercrime. So-called man-in-the-mobile issues, SIM card swapping, SIM card fraud. It goes on and on and on. By providing these services, we've been talking about financial education. We need to also educate people about the risks that go hand in hand with the services that we now bring to them. Otherwise, it's as good that I've got my money under the mattress and both my mattress and my money has been stolen once my mobile phone account has been cleared out with it. Yet another way in which we can help people are through what we in South Africa call stokvels, communities that pool their money together for various sort of forms and purposes. And these exist under very different names all around the world. Unfortunately, again, they do have fraudulent situations occurring within them. We then have the concept of payday lenders that sit hand in glove with these kind of consumer societies. And I was really interested the other day hearing a newspaper or reading a newspaper advert in the United Kingdom where you could borrow up to £500 for a maximum of 30 days at the small interest rate of 49%, compounded continuously. Okay, so you're talking about an effective interest rate somewhere in excess of 1,100% per annum. That is not bringing banking to the unbanked. That is simply ripping people off, if you ask me. Another issue that we have to deal with today is that in Africa, a large percentage of our population has moved offshore to so-called greener pastures in an attempt to generate revenue to send back home. With the world's moving towards know your customer type checks, anti-money laundering type requirements, increasingly you're finding banks that remit money to Africa, particularly to certain areas such as Yemen, Sudan, Somalia, those sort of countries, are being closed down by the regulatory authorities, particularly in the United States. So now you have a situation that you have people outside your country generating revenue that you want to bring back into the country, but they do not have the basic vehicle to do so. So how do we get around that kind of problem? Microbanks seem to be one way of doing it. An interesting situation until you look at Bangladesh and you look at Grameen Bank, which was set up by a Nobel laureate, Mr. Yusuf, who has since been deposed from position by the government due to allegations of corruption, non-compliance, and failure to meet certain licensing regulations in the country. So these things have problems as well. Investment funding from different regulatory sources is another way of trying to help the unbanked. But a big question that we have with these is, does the money ever get to the final consumer? Or is there fraud and corruption en route that skims off a significant percentage of it? And I want to come back to the point that I made a bit earlier. We cannot expect banks or other entities to invest in something if there is no potential return on investment for them. So from a community perspective, we can't just sit back and say, give, 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 give. We've got to be prepared to give something back in return. We have to understand that the cost of provision of financial services is there. There is a cost to it. And if we are actually going to meet our obligations and responsibilities, we need to work with financial services providers to come up with alternate ways of actually developing products that are actually beneficial to all of us. So what do we mean by sustainability in financial services? Is it the situation where banks and insurers have so-called green operations? So instead of sending you a paper statement, we send you an email statement, thereby saving the rainforests. Is that what we mean by sustainable? Is it the situation that we invest in environmentally friendly projects only? So for example, if we get asked to finance something like the Three Gorges Dam in China, should we turn that down because of the ecological damage and the displacement to human beings? Or do we just chase the almighty dollar in order to make bigger and better profits? Is it more about banks playing a role in the local economy, creating employment, facilitating transactions? Or is it that we actually want to in some way create partnerships? So, banking, local community, individual, or banking individual partnerships, whereby we can help change people's lives through different forms. And I would actually say that many of the for-profit as opposed to for-interest banking activities fall into this latter category. And maybe, just as a thought, we should stop calling it Islamic banking and actually talk about for-profits banking instead. It might be politically more acceptable in certain realms. In my mind, I think where we are getting to is that in order to develop sustainable services, what we need to understand is that there is a trade-off. And this trade-off is between the trust of the people that we serve and that are doing the serving, the reputation of the people providing the services, and the image or brand that they actually share. To become more sustainable, what I have to do is to grow the size of that triangle, but grow it in a way that is equal, giving equal power to each one of the 3 points. If I lose the trust of my customers, I start flattening that triangle, and effectively I am minimizing or reducing sustainable capability. Equally, if I do things that destroy my reputation, I'm squeezing sustainability. And likewise, if my image goes away, I'm doing exactly the same thing. However, in order to do this, there are a number of things that we have to deliver. We need to be able to provide the right kind of products at the right prices, with appropriate forms of promotion, clear details of what it is, not hiding things in the fine print, at the right place, in such a way that we deliver the right services to the people that need them. Ladies and gentlemen, it needs radical rethink. It doesn't need M-Pesa for every single person, because that is not achievable. What it needs is for us to put our heads together and to meet with the communities to say, how do we help that person standing outside his mud hut benefit from the types of financial products that they truly need? Thank you very much.
Wow. I think I can see a lot of eyes looking this way because Mike has put it out there. When we talk about sustainable banking, what do we really mean? Is the banking model fair? It described about the symbiotic relationships between banks and society at large. What's the trade-off? What's the ROI? What does it mean to actually bank the unbanked? So keep that in mind as we deep dive more into this, into this topic. I think to help us even think about this further, I would like to invite Professor Henrietta to come along and talk to us about impact investing as a tool for financial inclusion. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. All protocols observed. Thank you for inviting me. And if you just have my presentation up, I'll start. Right, so today I'm going to be talking about impact investing as a tool for inclusive growth. And as you can see from the other speakers, we all tend to have a slightly different understanding or very different understanding of various terms. So I'm going to start with trying to understand what inclusive growth is, which is something other people have tried to describe. Oops. For me, inclusive growth is really about everyone in society contributing and benefiting from the national economy. And this is what leads to sustainable development, as a number of us have already spoken about. And as we all know, in Nigeria, we do not have inclusive growth. In spite of the fact that we are now supposed to be the largest economy in Africa, poverty has been increasing at an alarming rate. As at 1980, poverty was said to be 27.2%. By 2011, it was said to be 72% practically, and this is by the Nigerian Bureau for Statistics. And just last week, I was preparing for a conference on manufacturing, and I saw a data that said that as at 2012, poverty had risen to at least 84% in Nigeria. So we have rising poverty despite economic growth, which means that more and more people are becoming financially excluded. And the professor from Wits Business School explained why. If you're not creating jobs, there's no real economy, and so that is bound to happen. Sorry. Right. So there's a wide disparity between economic growth and social development, and this is a recipe for disaster. Now, more than ever before, we're seeing things that never happened in Nigeria. Previously, we would say Nigerians are too happy to ever commit suicide, and now we're having suicide bombers. And that's because it's really like this. The rich are getting richer and the poor are getting poorer. And somebody sent me this, and I thought, this actually is what is happening, because the poor see you getting fatter, and they can barely afford a meal. And going from this sentiment, the next thing you have are terrorists, kidnapping, suicide bombers. And so it's a situation that we all have to be concerned about. Now, I guess it's not just in Nigeria or Africa where this disparity between economic development and social development is widening. So now there's a global trend towards impact investing to solve this problem. And I would also like to explain what impact investing is, because just like Islamic banking, people have all kinds of understanding of this, and it's not CSR, which is what we're all used to. Impact investing is really more about investing in businesses that solve social problems. In other words, you're making profit as a result of creating a positive social impact. Okay? A good example will be the lady who tried to solve the problem of recidivism, which is when prisoners go back into prison because they've gone back into crime. And that happens a lot because prisoners have a social stigma, so nobody wants to employ an ex-convict. So this lady decided to train them, provide hospitality training for them, and use them as her staff in running her restaurant chain. So she gives them an opportunity to work, and as a result, she has a steady stream of well-trained workers. Okay? I was talking with somebody at lunch, and I said to her, if, for example, you decided to reduce the problem of unemployment by teaching women, for example, okay, to do all sorts of hairstyles, and then you say to them, you belong to my pool, and then you advertise to the rest of the world saying that if they need a hairdo emergency any time of the day, any time of the year, you can send them someone who's well-equipped, okay? They pay you, you send these people over, they have a job, and you're making money as a result of giving these people a job and equipping them with training. They can also decide to go off on their own and be entrepreneurs. So it's a bit different from CSR, which is I make money, and then I donate a bit to society, okay? And as I said to Pradeep, sorry, I keep forgetting your name, Pratik, previously, I have no apologies for making money as a result of doing good. And doing good is good for business, okay? The reason why capitalism is seen as evil is because it's exploitative. But if you're doing good and everybody's winning, and you should actually make profits, because doing good drives profits. And just to prove that and also help everybody understand better what impact investing is, I wanted to show a 10-minute clip of what my MBA students did last year. I gave them 5,000 naira each, and I said to them, you must create value, make a sustainable social impact, and earn at least 5,000 naira every week. At the end of 10 weeks, a number of them had multiplied 5,000 naira to 1.2 million, 2.3 million. I think the least did 450,000. And they saw for themselves two key things. First, that you didn't need a lot of money to start a business. And second, that doing good drives profits. Because the reason why they had such huge patronage was that people identified with the social cause. So even when their products were not needed, just to contribute to their social causes, the students got a lot of patronage. And I believe that if businesses begin to understand that doing good socially not only makes the world, society safer for all of us, okay, but also actually spurs our business, then people will run away from it, because the problem is we have this dichotomy between wanting to make profit and doing good. But impact investing brings these two paradigms together. Okay, it's possible to achieve it. So I just have 3 more slides to go, and they're just quotes from people. But if it's possible to show the video now, we will just see that, and I'll end with 2 slides. Yeah? Hi, my name is Henrietta Onwebuzie. I lead sessions in entrepreneurship on the executive and MBA programs at the Lagos Business School. In the last 2 years, I have included impact investing in my entrepreneurship curriculum. Impact investing involves investing in profitable businesses that address social problems and transform the lives of the poor in a significant and sustainable manner while being mindful of the environment. This year, I initiated an impact investing project in my MBA class. I wanted them not just to learn about impact investing, but to have first-hand experience of it. At the beginning of the term, I gave each student the equivalent of $30 to start a business venture with 3 conditions: create value, make a sustainable social impact, and earn at least $30 every week. I wanted them to realize that doing good was compatible with doing well. I also wanted them to experience that they could start a business with little or no capital and work gradually towards their vision. The students were expected to give weekly progress reports, and at the end of the term, present business plans, explain how they would scale their social impact businesses in a sustainable way. The results were varied and amazing. A number of social businesses were born, and the students made good money.
This program is called Trading Fashion. It's inspired by my class entrepreneurship project of impact investing. I sold clothes, and people trading their old clothes to buy new clothes at a discount in order to create this shopping experience for people who usually don't go shopping. They usually don't have the choice to pick the kind of clothes they want. So I'm trying to create that environment where they can pick what they really want.
This idea is online retail. The name of our business is called Domestico Household Furnishing. The platform we are currently offering them is an online store at a very affordable price, while providing micro-entrepreneurs with a platform to sell more products faster.
Proud to come into the MBA. My view of business is you come, you make money, and you go. Now, this has changed the concept in my head that businesses don't just make money. You don't just run businesses to make money. There are stakeholders in which you're accountable to. Stakeholders like your environment is a stakeholder. People living in the environment are also stakeholders, which you owe a huge responsibility to. So impact investing kind of business makes you build your business model such that you're accountable to them, you're responsible for them, responsible for your employees, responsible for yourself, and responsible for your business to make it profitable. So this gives an holistic view in business and in the kind of models we should employ in running our business going forward.
My business will be